Good evening, everyone. We're operating without AV, so can you hear me in the back? You can't? All right, I'll shout a little louder. But without AV, so if any time in our discussions, if you're having a hard time, maybe just raise your hand and I'll give you a signal to speak a little bit louder. But my name is Doug Kinchy. I'm the director of the Kaufman Interfaith Institute, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this joint effort between the Kaufman Interfaith Institute and the Seidman College of Business, in particular the Ethics Center that Michael DeWild heads up. Michael and I, when we started the Interfaith Understanding Project, Michael and I talked about, wouldn't it be great if we brought together some of the interfaith community and the business community and talk about how faith impacts our business life, our professional lives. And so that's what tonight is all about. And so you've all been invited either from the business side or from the interfaith side or maybe a little bit of both. And we're very happy to have you here. I just want to say a couple of words about the Interfaith Project. I'm sure many of you are aware of it, but 2012 was declared by Mayor Hartwell as the Grand Rapids Year of Interfaith Understanding. This was done at a press conference on 9/12, the day after the 10th anniversary of 9/11. And it was the mayor presented it as the community's response to the 10th anniversary of 9/11. Of course, we honor and recognize the victims and heroes of that terrible day, but we also look forward to communities and nations and people who are committed to understanding and to peace. And so that's what started the Year of Interfaith Understanding. We have had cooperation from congregations of all faiths, from 8 different colleges, universities, and seminaries in the area, and over 20 different community organizations, from the Grand Rapids Symphony to the Econ Club, to the World Affairs Council, to libraries and book clubs and others. So far already, there has been over 100 interfaith events that have taken place in our community. And it looks like we'll be well over 200 or maybe even 300 before the year is up. So if you're not aware of what we're doing, there's a card on the outside that has our email address. It's www.2012, the year, GR, Grand Rapids Year of Interfaith.org. 2012gr.org, and there you can also sign up for our weekly e-newsletter. So if you'd like to know more about what's happening in this year-long effort in our community, please join us there. At this point, it's my distinct pleasure to introduce my colleague in this activity, Michael DeWild, who will introduce our panel and this evening's program. Michael?
Thanks. Thank you, Doug. Let me extend my welcome as well to everybody who's here this evening. The Ethics Center at Seidman has as part of its mission to explore the connection between business, the common good, and a life well lived, since for many people across the globe that includes a religious and spiritual component. We thought tonight's topic would be timely as always. I also want to thank Dean Williams and the Dean's Office for their support, as well as Robbie Osipov, who I believe has left already, but their help in putting tonight together was invaluable also. Our panelists this evening will take up questions concerning the connections between business values and religious ones. And they come at this not as theologians, but as practitioners, 2 business owners, a medical doctor. In setting this up, I asked them to consider questions like, what is the role of religious teaching in business life? Where is their convergence? Where is their divergence? Where might they be one and the same? Now, very generously, I've given each one of them 12 full minutes to respond to those questions. You might be thinking to yourself, gee, who needs 12 whole minutes to respond to those questions? They might, and if we need to stretch the time a little bit, we'll do that as well. I will introduce the speakers in turn. We're going to go in chronological order, not of the speaker's age, but of the religious faith traditions they represent. And once Dr. Sala is finished, we'll open the floor to questions, comments, and just the right amount of spirited theological debate. Our first speaker is Jeff Padnos, president of Lewis Padnos Iron and Metal. I want to give a special thanks to Jeff for being here tonight. As many of you, I'm sure, are aware, Jeff and Doug lost their father, Stuart, last week. I was privileged to be at the service at Temple Emmanuel. And there heard President Lubbers speak movingly of Stewart's generosity to the arts and to education, especially to this university. And as someone who works here, who has benefited directly from the Padnos family largesse, I also want to extend my thanks and condolences. Yes. Jeff earned his MBA from Harvard and then worked with the international consulting firm McKinsey & Company, along with his cousins, Mitch and Shelley, and his brother Doug. They comprise the third generation of leadership at Padnos. Jeff will be speaking tonight from the Jewish tradition.
Thank you. I'm glad you said right off the bat I'm not a rabbi, so if what I said makes sense to you, I hope I'm being accurate, and if it doesn't, I'm probably not. As Michael also said it, it's an emotional time for me, so, and I never know when it's going to hit me, so if something odd happens, just please bear with me. I'm hopefully not, but it's also a very special time of the year, being Passover. This is right now. They can't hear. Okay. It's also a special time of the year, being Passover. The Passover Seder is the first religious experience that a religious service that a young person will attend that they understand, or the intention is for them to understand. We are commanded, in fact, as part of that ritual, to explain the story to the youngest people at the Seder, and to each person at the Seder on terms that they can understand. And the central message, I think, is a central message of Judaism, which is that you know the bitterness of slavery, of marginalization, of rejection, and therefore you have a special obligation to do something about it if you ever see it. And we're also told that it's an ancient, that it's not just an ancient story, because in every generation a new situation has arisen in which we've had to respond. And so we're not supposed to feel that this is something that happened a long time ago, but that happened presently. And I'll just quickly say, in my father's case, it was quite remarkable that it was just this week. The funeral was the day before our Seder, but he would not have wanted us to skip that because he was actually captured a prisoner of war in World War II, and all his parents knew was that he was missing in action, and that's all they know. And then the postcard saying that he was alive actually arrived at his parents' house in Holland, Michigan, where just the two of them were sitting down to get ready for their Passover Seder. That was when this card arrived. It actually arrived at the post office after the mail had been delivered, and the postmaster saw it being a postcard, of course, that this was not something that was going to wait until tomorrow to be delivered, but so he made a special visit over, and we got that, and they got that. I was, of course, not there. And so we tell that story every year. I said, if anybody has any doubts about this not just being an ancient story, and I usually couldn't tell that story even when he was sitting right there without getting emotional. And then to have his funeral the day before was kind of just a metaphor. I mean, it really was symbolized it for us. But I think that he lived in a way to express, to live out that business of doing something about it, not putting up with other people being subjected to the bitterness of rejection. So how does a religion inform my business? How does it affect my business, everyday business life? One way to answer this would tell you about a newspaper story that was not written one time. I was asked this same question by a reporter for a local newspaper, and they said, "Can we set up a time and maybe talk about, for me to talk about how does your religion affect your business?" And I said, setting up a time is not easy for me, and as it was not easy to set up a time to get 3 people here tonight, I said, but I'm prepared to talk about it right now. And I said, I don't think I'm going to tell you what you want to hear, because what I supposed that the person wanted to hear, and it was in fact true, was they wanted some arcane, unusual practice that they could write about. Oh, look at this odd thing. I mean, such as no alcohol. It might have been no alcohol on company premises, or no alcohol can be charged on an expense account, or no pork on company premises. And I explained to them that that's not the case with me. I said I try not to eat pork myself. I said, but if my employee group wants to celebrate some no lost time record or some particular accomplishment, and they want to have a pig roast, they can have a pig roast, and they just put a chicken on the grill for me, because I don't have to. My ritual rules are my ritual rules, and I have no need to impose them on others. So then I said, but but my religion does affect my business, and I'm going to tell you it's very simple. And I don't think it's going to be anything. You can write a whole newspaper article about it, which is simply that you treat other people the way you would like to be treated. And I said, it's not the way that I am treated, because I still at the time was dealing with General Motors, so it isn't the way I am treated, but the way I would like to be treated. And they did not write the article, but so obviously you recognize it as the Golden Rule. The Jews attributed to Hillel. He was a Pharisee rabbi who lived at the same time as Jesus. And every Jewish child is told the story of when Hillel, a Pharisee, kind of a man of the people, that was kind of the people's group, and another rabbi who was a Sadducee. They were the strict constructionist types, and more of the elite class. And the two of them were in the marketplace talking, and a skeptic came up to them and said, if you could explain the entire Torah, the first 9 books of Moses, if you could explain the entire Torah while I'm standing here on 1 foot, I'll convert to your religion. And of course the strict guy said, get out of here. I mean, I don't, that's ridiculous. But Hillel answered, whatever is hateful to you, don't do it to anybody else. All the rest is commentary. Go and study. And that was the deal. And I can tell you that every Jewish child, that's the lesson. If you get that and get it you got to get it, not just hear it, but you got to get it in a sense that you really internalize it. Jesus was also a Pharisee. Now, just to illustrate the practical example, the difference between the Pharisees, the people's rabbis, that would read the word and then interpret it, versus the Sadducees. There was an order: you shouldn't make fire on the Sabbath. Now the Sadducees actually sat in the dark on the Sabbath night. The Pharisees are the people that introduced the idea of lighting the Sabbath candles just at sundown, and it was light through the Sabbath, and so in terms of, and that was 2,000 years ago, and today the Jews that are still around are the descendants of those people, the Sadducees, these guys that were complete, that didn't last. But the Pharisees were the source of the oral law, interpreting the written so that it could continue to evolve and apply. So, as a side note, I might mention when you talk about Sabbath, that Christians actually observed the Sabbath on Saturday until 325 or so, when Constantine converted and made Christianity the official religion of the Roman Empire. The Romans previously worshipped a sun god, and Constantine ordered that from henceforth the courts would be closed, all government business would be closed on Sunday, and it was still a good trade. But I mean, it was just, so there was just that similarity that has continued. In terms of ethical practice today, I personally feel I could easily wear a WWJD bracelet and act accordingly. I mean, I say that with complete respect, and I believe that if everyone did that, the world would be a better place. If everybody truly did that and thought about what that meant. I also believe that my Jewish education prepares me to have a legitimate opinion about what Jesus would have done, since he was a Jew all his life. I have to say, we can discuss it later. It is, for me, hard to understand how someone could be wearing one of those bracelets and speak and act in a way that is so intolerant, for example, of immigrants and gay people. I mean, I just don't see how you could read these words and then ask, what would Jesus do, and then do that. Well, that's maybe a topic that will come up.
It will now.
I'll just start with a few just core points, any of which could be discussion later on. I really do believe that that doing business right can be like applied religion. Applied religion. We all wonder, how do we? I mean, this is where you get a chance to do it. Starting with, and business is a noble way to apply religion, because if you think about what we're asked to do, listing the kind of different forms of charity, I'm just going to go with Maimonides listing. Well, one is to give someone the money and they know who it is, and then at some level you get to a point where you give the money and you don't know who got it, and the recipient doesn't know who gave it. But the highest level is to give someone a job, and allow them to take to take care of themselves, and we do that all the time. And we can be proud to be business people, and it is not even like remotely true that it's like be successful in business or be ethical. It's just absolutely not the case. Doing business right is like applied religion. A second point, there's often a debate with my Christian friends that will debate within themselves of the primacy of faith versus works. I always astounded when I amaze your friends when I think it was James will say faith without works is dead. They say, the New Testament's a major book of Western civilization. It's not that long, In fact, it's actually one of the shortest ones you could read. And get with Judaism, it's no contest. Works wins. And that's just the way it is. As far as an afterlife, Jewish, especially Reformed Jewish belief is that we still live on in the hearts of those who cherish the memory. And of course, memories are made by what we do on earth. And now to quote someone who was half Jewish, Bob Marley, you think it's a well-known song, and now you see what life is worth, you better look for yours on earth, and now you see the light, stand up for your rights. I mean, he was emphasizing this world, and that's the emphasis. It's what you do in this world, and it's just works wins. It's extremely rational. There's logic. There's if then. They go and actually, interestingly enough, Jesus would apply that same kind of rabbinic logic. If he said, "Consider the lilies of the field." And I can't remember all the other ones, but it's if it works this way in this mild manner, just imagine how much more so. So I mean that's a very defined form of rabbinic logic that say if it's this way for this small case, just imagine how much more so it would be in the other. So you got logic, parables, analogies. It's a very great way to learn. Now, in the business world, we actually quote the Bible surprisingly often. I mean, in the Passover story in particular, we say there's a line where it says, "Alas, a new king arose in Egypt, who knew not Joseph," who didn't remember what he had done. We've had many a case where he said, "And they got a new purchasing agent who didn't remember all the things that we did." And I mean, it's true. I mean, we did all these great things, and this guy only wants to know what have you done for me lately. He didn't realize, I told you about the 7 years and you had to store it up. And another practical application is with term limits. I mean, with term limits, you think you got the legislature, it's okay, leave us alone, and here's why. And, there's a bunch of new ones now, and they got to start all over again. And, so it happens all the time. And, it sounds funny, but we actually we don't quote it like, it's illustrative and just say, and also don't feel so bad for yourself because it's not like it's a new thing. You're not the first one to have to deal with a recurring theme. Don't put a stumbling block before the blind. Very good advice. Lock your car, okay? So, in a case of metal theft, try to make something, put a cover over it, keep it inside, do something about it. But that's rules of keeping kosher and other rules of separation. Eat, when you eat, when you don't eat, the work, when you don't work, what you wear. There's actually rules about you shouldn't wear clothing from wool and linen mixed. I mean, and the interesting thing is about some of those rules is written in a way that you can't, there's no explanation except God said. I mean, if you want to, it's not like don't eat pork because you might get trichinosis or something else like that. Because, I mean, which some people would try to find a reason. There's no reason. That's just it. That's the way it is, okay? So reform are somewhat arrogant that we get to choose. But the interesting thing is that the point is all of these separations are supposed to gear you up for the most important separation, which is there's a way to treat other people. There's a way not to treat other people. And these rituals are intended to remind us of that. So that if you think that observing these ritual rules, it covers you in some way for bad dealings with others. I mean, that's putting it plainly. You've not only gotten it wrong, you've gotten it exactly wrong. I mean, that's precisely wrong. I mean, no question. But you can't, eat kosher candy. I mean, we had a guy that we knew kosher candy on this and kosher this, and we went out and looked at one of the trucks that he had. And I thought, hey, that brake is smoking, and the guy said, well, the driver said, well, it better smoke. It's the only one that works. I mean, that's immoral. To put an unsafe truck on the road, and it's embarrassing to me for a guy that makes a point about being Jewish and then does something like that. That would change your name to Smith or whatever, just go local, whatever. So it's very much, unfortunately, we got no monopoly on that. In any religion, we often see among the most unspoken and allegedly traditional or orthodox of many faiths, you see that kind of situation. So I guess I conclude here, whether in religion or in public speaking, don't be afraid to repeat the point. I guess I'll just quickly say that the point being, it comes back to Hillel's a lesson that whatever you wouldn't like being done to you, don't do it to anybody else. All the rest is commentary. So that's my summary. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Fred Keller is Chairman, CEO of Cascade Engineering. It's a leading multi-business manufacturer in the transportation, recycling, office furniture, and renewable energy industries, specializing in plastic injection molding. Fred's a material science engineer by training, founded the company in 1973. Today, Cascade Engineering is comprised of 14 strategic business units, one of the largest certified B or benefit corporations in the world. He and it are widely recognized for their business achievements and community involvement, and for leading the way in creating what Fred refers to as the emerging sustainable economy. And I'll just add personally that Fred is also leading the way, in pushing me to develop new courses for the MBA program here that focus on giving our students real-time opportunities to work with and learn from area businesses. His zealousness about this is inspiring, and one might even say religious.
Thank you, Michael. Can you hear okay in the back? Yeah. All right. This is a daunting task in lots of ways. I mean, just to think about all of the Christian religions to begin with, and to be sitting here trying to represents the wrong word. I'm not trying to. I'm going to talk about me and its influence on me. But it is interesting to think about the breadth and width of Christianity. It's wonderful to be sitting between these two representatives of other religions, and to be able to think about how this can all work together, how this is something that doesn't need to be divisive, but often is. And how do we think about that as a community, I think is an opportunity for us to think about. And when I think about the influence of religion on my life, I try to, my immediate reaction was, what is not influenced by religion in my life? I mean, it's been something that has impacted me from birth, for sure. And it's something that not a day goes by without thinking about those things. So how do you choose from all of that to talk about in 12 minutes? So I've chosen 4 figures, 4 people, incidents to talk about, just to give some reflection. You know, impact happens, I think, in 2 times. One in times of crisis, and other in terms of quiet reflection. And then there's a lot of time in between. But I think in those times of quiet reflection and in those times of crisis, it's interesting to think about how religion impacts you. In terms of times of quiet reflection, it's the opportunity to build and think and to deepen. In times of crisis, you're acting on kind of autopilot. Your whole reflexive notions kick in. So it's just interesting to think about those kinds of times in your life. As a Christian and as a Methodist, I've been pretty profoundly challenged by the founder of Methodism, John Wesley, and it was his admonition or his kind of rules for living that I constantly think about. I even carry around his rules for living in my pocket. Not that it's too tough to remember, but it's got too many phrases in it, so I read it all the time. Do all the good you can, by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, in all the times you can, to all the people you can, as long as you can. Got it? It's pretty simple. He's a man of dedication, of determination, of influence. It's not a bad way to lead one's life. It's challenging, but it's good. That resonates with me. Another person that was very influential in my life was my father. My father's story is very interesting. Actually, my father and Stuart were good friends. He used to refer to Stuart and his brother Seymour as my Jewish buddies. You can imagine a generation that goes back. And they knew each other shortly after the war. And my father was in the manufacturing business, and they were in the scrap business, and they would buy metals together, and if the price went up, they would sell it. If the price went down, my dad would use it. And it was the original hedge fund. But my father, we're not sure. I think he had maybe a 10th grade education. He was a little rough around the edges, apparently, as a youth, and found himself out of the street doing some things. He was always working, always made a living. But he, at one point, met a fellow named Ralph, who was very instrumental in his life. Ralph got him to, with a couple of the other his friends, to go to church. And they decided that, at one time, he decided to go to Fort Wayne Bible College. And he went there for I don't know how long exactly, but then ended up going up north to the UP to a little town called Cedarville. Literally pried the shutters off of a couple of shuttered churches up there in the boom bust area of Cedarville. And to keep body and soul together, cut ice in the Straits of Mackinac for the Grand Hotel, and was able to have those churches reopened. But it was when he had to bury his good friend in the very first funeral service he'd ever been in. He conducted it. And he decided that this was not a profession that he would pursue, but that he would spend his life helping those that were. My father taught me to lead by example, to not let others define you. Let your actions define you. Live my life as an example, don't preach about it. That was a pretty strong message from my father, and we also had an interesting dialogue around the lesson in Mark, verse 10, verse 25. It's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to get into heaven. My father was a self-made man. He was determined to be able to have some rationale for that particular verse. But he explained that the eye of the needle, now this is his story, and I'm not sure exactly, maybe it's something we can have, this is a point of discussion, but the eye of the needle is as he explained it, was the opening in the wall of the town. And that for a camel to go through the eye of the needle, they had to get down on their knees and literally work their way through that opening in a very painful and difficult way. But it was not impossible to do. So that was something that we had some very good discussion about. Let me shift to a third person that was very important to me, was my wife Donna. And she died when she was yet 42 years old, breast cancer. 3 daughters, 6, 12, and 16 were left. And it was a very important time in my life, a time that caused me to reflect, a time that where your religion and what your reflexes are doing are more important than what you're trying to learn at that point in time. And as we grasped the finality of Donna's death, I was comforted by the words that Paul was writing in the epistle to the believers in Ephesus, from Ephesians 3:17. I particularly like the Living Bible interpretation. And I pray that Christ will be more and more at home in your hearts, living within you as you trust in him. May your roots go down deep into the soul of God's marvelous love. And may you be able to feel and understand, as all God's children should, how long, how wide, how deep, and how high his love really is. And to experience this love for yourselves, though it is so great that you will never see the end of it, or fully know or understand it. And so at last you will be filled up with God himself. And to be comforted with the unknowableness of God, to be comfortable with the situation that says you can't know it. We can't be understanding all. And to know that that's something that penetrates your inner being, to know that it's okay not to be all-knowing. There's only one that's all-knowing. Through Donna's death, I sense that God is present for us all, for all time. That the separation of this life from the other, from the after, is thin. And we have an opportunity that is not measurable, not known, not knowable. We must live our life with purpose and with urgency. Now let me shift to the fourth person. I'm on the fourth or the third? Fourth. Fourth person. A guy named Joe Matthews, preacher. Ecumenical Institute in Chicago, times probably 1970s. He was preaching at Bayview, where we had a cottage in that period of time. I remember Joe particularly because he was a magnificent speaker, had a booming voice. And he was a believer that said that we really ought to rip, and he would just describe this in very vivid terms. We ought to rip the back off the Bible because it's still being written. The concept was that we still have a lot to write about. We still have a lot of living to do that can be documented. But there was one particular phrase that he used which stuck with me, and I just want to share this with you. So I have to kind of prepare you for this. Booming voice. From the moment you are belched forth into this world from your mother's womb, you are hurtling towards your death. I can't get that one out of my mind. It's so true. We are in fact on a collision course with our death sometime. We don't know when, we don't know how, we don't know when, but it's important that we have urgency in our life, that we think about the opportunity we have. And we have an opportunity in business, we have an opportunity in our personal lives, and we can either grab that opportunity or we can let it go by. It's a choice. We do have a choice. Good preaching uplifts, it reminds us of our common goal and not our individual fight for salvation. That's one that I don't quite understand, and we can talk about that. You know, is religion all about how we save ourselves, or is it all about how we make this a better world? I think we've got this wonderful opportunity. Some of you know that I like to think about sustainability. And sustainability is about not only the profits we make in our business, but it's also how we impact the world from a social standpoint and from an environmental standpoint. We have an opportunity for impact. We can choose to follow it, we can choose to work at it, or not. To whom much is given, much is expected. And that leads to leadership. I've learned over the years there's all kinds of examples of Christian leadership. People call it servant leadership. It's pretty much defined as leading from behind, if you will. Mark and John, I think it is, that both talk about this. Whoever wants to be a leader among you must be your servant. Whoever wants to be first among you must become your slave. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve. This is something that I think we all can work at. So we've been given a great opportunity to be on this earth. We're literally hurtling towards our death as we are reminded by our experiences of this weekend, this past week. Life is fleeting. And I reflect on the mother of our 3 girls whose life was cut short, but who had so much impact while here. We have an opportunity to make an impact. We can choose to work at it or not. And we have a choice on how we lead, best from behind. And that's what I've learned so far.
Thank you, Fred. Dr. Muhammad Salah graciously agreed to be part of this panel at a somewhat later date. Looking forward to your remarks. He's an American physician of Syrian origin, receiving his MD from the University of Damascus in 1992. He moved to West Michigan in 1993. He's been working with Advantage Health Physician Network since 1996. He'll be speaking from an Islamic perspective, and it's important to mention also that he is chairman of the board of the Islamic Mosque and Religious Institute on East Paris.
I should thank you for coming here, and I should also thank my son Abraham for doing all the slides for me last night. So he's my IT person. Also, I tend to be soft-spoken sometimes, so please, if you don't hear me in the back, just please raise your hand, and I will try my best to raise my the volume. Okay. So again, as some of the speakers said, I'm really not an Islamic scholar, so I will try my best to represent the Islamic values, how it affected my business as a doctor also, and business in general. So we'll start with a great example that sometimes tend to be forgotten, is Islam in Indonesia. I mean, this is an old story that I learned when I was a child. Actually, I learned a different version. Yet last night, after Abraham went to bed, I went to Wikipedia, search about Islam in Indonesia. I know my kids told me don't use Wikipedia because it doesn't have it's not reliable. But I guess I learned another version of the story. So I'll share with you the two versions of the stories. And the one I learned when I was a child is Arab Muslim traders used to go to Indonesia for business trips once or twice a year. And somehow, before Islam, obviously, those traders were not very trustworthy to the Indonesian population. They were cheaters. They used to lie. They promised. They break their promises. So suddenly, after Islam, something happened. I mean, the people of Indonesia start seeing totally different behavior from those people, and start asking them, what's wrong? You're much more reliable now. You keep your word. You keep your promise. You sell us 10 pounds. Will be 10 pounds versus 8 pounds like a few years ago. So what happened? And then they start explaining to them what's happened. Really, it's just a new prophet in Arabia to start teaching us the rule of Islam, which is so and so, and which we're gonna go through them after this example. So that's really what introduced the population of Indonesia to Islam. And then again, it's a few. Nobody knows exactly the number of those traders who used to go to Indonesia, but most of the Islamic history books say less than 100. And then those 100 people really now today in today's count, it's produced 202 million Muslim in Indonesia today. So this goes back to those less than 100 traders who really their behavior transformed 100% before Islam to after Islam. Now, the Wikipedia story is a little bit different, but they said very similar to the second part, which is basically the Muslim traders start going to Indonesia in the 8th century, which is 1,300 years ago, and the population of Indonesia saw a very trustworthy, reliable, nice people to deal with, and then they asked them, what's your religion? And then they said Islam, and then that's what introduced Islam to Indonesia. So, I mean, regardless which story you take or you believe, I mean, this is in front of our eyes today. We have 202 million Muslims in Indonesia because of few Muslim traders who really represented Islam the right way. So, and I wonder if we send to Indonesia today a few Wall Street traders, what happened? So I took some. I read the teachings, a few of the examples from the teaching of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Also, some of the examples from the teaching of the Quran, which is the two major source of legislation in Islam, is the Quran, the holy book, and the teaching of Prophet Muhammad. So I just took a few quotes, and I will explain it. The first one is, your religion is reflected by your dealings with others. I think that's what actually transformed the behavior of those traders, which I just spoke about. Really, is your dealing with others is when people start saying, well, he's a good person. What's your religion? What do you believe in? Or what happened? So that also I see it in my practice as a physician when I deal with my patients. I mean, my patients don't see me when I go to the mosque in the evening, or don't see me when I give charity to people. So they see me when they deal with me every morning at work. So really, that's I always remember this quote when I deal with my patients in day-to-day business, and I think all Muslims should also keep that quote in their hearts when they deal with other people, either trader or a teacher or whatever their business is, I think this should be the number one rule is for us when we deal with other people. And then the second quote I took from the teaching of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is Allah, God would love that his worshippers excel in their jobs. So don't be an average person. Try to be excellent person in your job. Excellent physician, excellent teacher, excellent student. To my kids, I always teach them that. So try not to be an average person. Try to be an excellent person in your job. So that's one of the teaching of Prophet Muhammad. And then the third one, give your employee their wages even before their sweat dries. So really, this is a symbolic thing. But this is how a business owner should deal with his employees. So should respect their effort, their time, and then the value to the company. And then actually, I see that the system here is more Islamic than the system in Syria. In Syria, we used to get our salary at the end of the month, so once a month. Now here, it's every 2 weeks. So actually, the American system is more Islamic compared to the Syrian system. And then the last one is also Prophet Muhammad taught us what's perfection. What's the definition of being a perfect person? Is it like when you reach your $1 million in your bank account, or when you get your degree from a famous university? Actually, his definition of perfection was totally different. Is to worship Allah, God, as if you see Him. And if you cannot achieve this state of devotion, then you must consider He is looking at you. And I also really keep this in my heart every day in my business. I mean, when I deal with people, I say, okay, my God is watching me every moment I do anything. So can you imagine? I mean, your God is watching you, and I mean, how can anybody do anything wrong when you believe this deep in your heart that God is watching you every moment? So be careful when you do anything wrong. So. And then we'll shift to the teachings of the Quran. I took also a few quotes from the Holy Book. Allah has raised the heaven high, and Allah has set up the balance, so that you may not transgress in the balance. Establish the weight with justice, and do not give less in measurement. So Allah really, this is a great value in our business, is try to be just, try to give their people their rights. When they pay you something, when they pay you for £10, give them £10. Not like the Muslim traders before, and after Islam, where they used to give £8 instead of £10. So really, I think the Muslim traders, when they went to Indonesia after Islam, I'm sure that they kept this deep inside their heart, because you have to be trustworthy. And God really almost compared the creation of the heaven and also to be just in the balance. So really, He gave us how important to be just in your business, and He almost, I mean, he compared the creation of heaven to being just in your business. And then the second one, which I also like to include, is woe to those who give less in measure and weight, defraud. Those who, when they receive by measure from people, demand full measure, but when they give by measure or give by weight to others, they give less than due. I think this is the behavior of the Muslim traders before Islam, and that God is really warning us very hardly about it. You have to be really just when you deal with others. You have to be fair to them and just to them. And then just going back to the business in Islam, how Islam affected the business owners after Islam. I mean, there is a lot of not a lot, but there is quite few restrictions in Islam. Like, for example, we were not supposed to deal with any alcohol as far as buying, selling, drinking, of course. No tobacco, no gambling, no loans with interest, no dealing with things that you don't know, you don't own. Of course, Wall Street will not like that last one. So there's quite few restrictions, but at the same time, Islam didn't just put the restriction, but also gave the solutions. And the solution, I picked the fourth one, no loan with interest. I mean, it will be difficult in this society or in the Western society overall to believe a life with no interest. But I give a great example is the mosque I attend in East Paris. The whole project cost us about $2 million, and it's a zero interest. We own the whole thing. I mean, we basically what we did, we raised the fund, as we go. We needed the walls, we raised the fund for the walls. We needed the ceiling, we raised the fund for the ceiling. We needed the interior, we raised the fund. So really, the project took us about 10 years from start to finish, but we own the whole thing. We have nothing, no bank will own anything in our project. So we were very proud of that. So the solution for no loans with interest is the shared risk. That's the Islamic system for no interest loans. So basically, if I'm entrepreneur, I would like to start a new business, I don't have enough money, I have a friend or a cousin who does have the money, then he will give me the loan, but with a shared risk. So basically, if I will make money, then we'll share the profit. We lose money, then we'll share the loss also. And that's exactly what the Islamic banks also in some of the Muslim countries, their practice is called the murabaha, which basically exactly the same. So they buy the house with you, and they share the risk with you. So if the prices goes down, like what happened here the last 3 years, then the bank will lose some money. Not like here, when the bank really don't care about you. If the house lost 100,000 of its value, then it's your responsibility. That's not true in the Islamic system. It's a shared risk. So the bank will share some risk with you when they buy the house for you. And then the last thing about how business in Islam, Islam always also taught us how to balance between this life and the hereafter, or the life after Judgment Day. We do believe deeply in Islam that this life is transitional life to our final destination, which is heaven, hopefully, because that's what our original place before Adam and Eve made the mistake. And then that God moved them to earth. So we believe that this is a transitional life, and then eventually we'll go to our destination, which is hopefully heaven. So God also in Quran, this is two quotes from the Quran. Really, reading those two quotes show us the balance between this life and the hereafter. So He told us to work for the heaven, but at the same time, don't forget your share from life. So I'll read it for you. All you believe when the call is proclaimed for the prayer on Friday. That's our congregational prayer, which is equal the Saturday for the Jewish and then Sunday for the Christians. So when the call is proclaimed for the prayer on Friday, then hasten to the remembrance of Allah and leave off business. This is better for you if you but know. I mean, a business owner probably will not understand this, right? How it's better for me. I'm losing money by closing my business, going to Friday prayer. But God really promised us that this time that you're going to close your business is God promising us to. He's going to make it up for you. Don't worry. Just close your business, go to Friday prayer, and come back. Those customers will be waiting for you. Don't worry about it. And that, of course, takes a lot of belief in your heart to be really a good Muslim, to believe in that. How are you going to close your business for about half an hour to 45 minutes, but still you believe deep in your heart that the customers will be waiting for you. And then the second half is when Friday prayers is finished, you may disperse in the land and seek the grace of Allah by working. Remember Allah much so that you may be successful. So again, after Friday prayer, God told us, go back to work. That's one of the duty here in this life, is to work hard. So again, Allah or God didn't really forget us here in life. I mean, you should work for your final destination, but at the same time, don't forget to be working here in this life. So this is I like this quote because again show the balance between how to work for your destination, to be in heaven, but at the same time don't forget the life we live in. So that's the end of my presentation. Hopefully you learned something about Islam by those. Hopefully I didn't exceed my 12 minutes.
Please join me again in thanking all three of the speakers. We do have time for questions, thoughts, comments, something you'd like to address to any one of the speakers? Please. Just so you know, I may repeat your question just for the purposes of the audio.
Oh, okay, sure. I have a question for Dr. Salah. How are employers around here about letting Muslims off for Friday prayers for an hour or so. Are they pretty good about that, or do people have trouble with that?
It's a great question. I think it's probably more the fault of Muslims because they're afraid to approach their employer. Okay, can I have the Friday between 1:30 and 2:30 off? Because they are scared that, well, it's going to be inconvenient for the business. For example, I give a great example of when I joined Advantage Health. I mean, I explained to them at the beginning when I signed the contract that Friday afternoon is, and we do get one Friday afternoon. Can you believe it? A physician will take one half day off a week, and I did request Friday for a religious reason, and it's totally respected for the last 16 years. And even the nurses and the employee in my office will protect me so much when somebody calls Friday between 1 and 2:30. They know that, okay, Dr. Salah is not available. He will get back to you at 2:30, so really, I think it's more our fault more than the employer fault that we don't approach the employer at the beginning. We don't explain to them how important it is to be there. And I know a lot of people made arrangement with their employers where they get their lunch hour on Friday between 1:30 and 2:30 versus like 12 to 1. And I think, in the most part, is widely respected. I mean. In the Islamic Center also, we had like a pre-printed letters to explain to employers how important it is to be off that hour between 1:30 and 2:30 on Friday. So I think I'll say probably 95% of us at the Islamic Mosque at East Paris 3, we don't have any issues with the employer in West Michigan, we were very grateful for that.
I would like just to say it's a great time to be in such a presentation at a time when we are in the country hearing a lot of discussions about, the new or the re-debate of the relation between the state and religion. And you hear that about a lot of the news and how that relates to our economy and what we are going through. And from the three speakers today, it's really, I would say, very reassuring to see how religion, regardless of what it is, the three religions, pretty much there is so much overlap, and all that is just pushing for, in a way or another, improvement to work environment, improvement. This will all push to better economy. So I think it's great to have such a discussion, and I should, thank the university for hosting this, because I think it's a very important time to show the relationship of religion to our life in every part of it, and most importantly, business as well.
Thank you.
When I hear thoughtful people talk about the various faith traditions, I'm always struck by how much they agree. Why do we focus so much, why do some people focus so much on the areas where we may not have complete alignment in today's world?
Well, I think that you've got human nature is competitive, and people trying to get ahead will seize whatever is handy. And religion, I think, from very early on, has been abused and seized for personal ambition. As communism claimed to be anti-religion, and so people seized that to get their personal advantage. I mean, it wasn't like everybody was equal there. So, I mean, I still remember, in a joking way, when I went to high school, we had the East unit and the West unit, and people would say East is least and West is best. I mean, you just whatever it is you're doing, people just form teams, and it's just been abused. I mean, I've even got debates with at least one of my own children who will point to the negatives done in the name of religion, but that's just clearly an abuse. I mean, it isn't what was intended. But, I mean, that's the most obvious. And politically, people will seize anything for political gain, and they'll do that as well. But I mean, I remember when Benazir Bhutto was here, and she said, "These hijackers hijacked my religion." What can you say? I mean, they'll take anything that happens that they think will work for personal ambition, but it isn't I think it is up to the senior members or all the members of a religion to make a distinction. This person does not speak for me or for us, and just the opposite. And you do sometimes see that, but and I think that's important to draw those distinctions for everybody else. That's just one response.
My assumption, or my observation, I guess, is that all religions have a spectrum of zealousness, if you will. And we hear from the loudest, usually are on the edges, the fringes. And I think that my solution to that is that we need to form a new way of thinking about this and have radical moderates. I don't know how do we come up with radical moderates? I mean, we need to be raising our voices.
Noisy ones.
Passionate moderates.
Passionate moderate. I call that.
I totally agree. I mean, I think that I always blame, which I'm one of them, is the silent majority of Muslims, that they really don't speak up and defend their religion, compared to the 1% that show up on CNN every night when they do something bad. I mean, I think most of it is just the silent majority need to speak up, like Fred said, and just try to start a dialogue with other religion and try to find the commonality like we did tonight.
Please.
Well, my husband just said, say it. I appreciate your words. I appreciate your hope and your inspiration. Somebody who's worked in this community for a very long time, who was raised Catholic and from a very young age being told I was going to hell for believing the way that I believed. It's been interesting to try to be a part of the business community, not having some of the shared voices that are prevalent in our community. Have any of you experienced, I mean, because you are such successful people in your own right, I mean, have you experienced the discrimination that's, I've been told I was a Jezebel by one of my employers because I wore fingernail polish. And I could probably share maybe a half a dozen more very interesting stories about people who've made decisions about me in this community, not recognizing my own. I mean, I'm probably more conservative in some of my thought than half the people I know, but I don't express that through my religion. So how do I move through this community? I just think that there's so many layers to what we are. This is just scratching the surface of what has to be flaming moderates or whatever you want to call us. Anyway, it's more of a comment, I guess, than a question, but I just think it's prevalent in our community. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, in some cases, I do say I've challenged the. I was actually asked. I was very flattered to be asked at Western Theological Seminary where they train the ministers. And the guy, he knew I was Jewish, and he asked me to come and speak to his senior class on how to be a pastor to a business person. And I said if I had longer, I'd be more Socratic about trying to. I started off the conversation by asking what they thought was more important, faith versus works. And I ended by saying, don't let them out of church thinking that, I said that for them, that their faith is more important than works. I say if you're a business person and you got a minister and you're talking to as a minister, you got to works is what we in business especially do, and so I would encourage you encourage the people of faith and their leaders. And it seems like when you encounter that, the leaders presumably have a better education. You're going to find some where they're all going to be pretty extreme, but hopefully leaders going to have an education and can make that point if you're seeing that that's happening. It's I would make an analogy with bullying. We had this discussion, it wasn't that long ago, where they said, we tried to pass a law here. It became a national joke here in Michigan when they were trying to pass anti-bullying legislation, and they put an amendment on there that said, it's unless, it's against the rules unless it's because of sincere religious conviction. And that's, I mean, we made Bill Maher, we made, we were on all the lists here in Michigan, and hopefully, you got to get to the leaders who say, hey, that's just nuts, but I mean, to not just leave it as a comment. I mean, it's better to light a candles and curse the darkness. And I mean, you got to start with the people where you got the best shot, and hopefully, the religious leaders can kind of bring the flock along on points like that. Because there's plenty of lessons. Judge not lest you be judged. I mean, it's not like anybody says that's okay. Any official people say, it doesn't work with WWJD either. So.
Well, I would just simply add that my belief is that there's really only one judge, and everybody else has just got opinions, and that's a choice we can make. And we can choose to believe that, or we can choose to be crippled by it. So that's how I feel.
One thing I always, again, as I said in my speech about how the dealing with others, this is really what represents your religion. So I always keep that in my mind when I deal with others, and then try to lead by example. So I do understand, people what they read or see about Islam in the media. So I assume they have a bad image before I even enter the room, but try to really change that view by just dealing with them the way I learned from the teaching of the Prophet and the Quran. So I hope at the end of their visit that they will change their mind about saying, oh, well, no, I think what we heard in CNN last night was wrong. This guy looks okay or something.
Fox News.
Doctor, you and I probably have something in common that I wasn't sure if I would share that, but when I was a young boy growing up in Holland, Michigan, pretty much the only Jewish family, my grandmother got to me at just the right point in time and said that I was responsible for myself, and I was responsible for my family, and I was responsible for all the Jews in the world. Because I was the only one most of them were ever going to meet. And they were going to judge everybody how I acted. Now, most people, she got me just at the time when I said, okay, I can do this. Most people would kind of run the way, and you got to be careful. But she did get me at a time. And I've told that story to some because we also work on prisoner reentry programs, trying to help people get out. And I'm not afraid to say, hey, I'm sorry for but you owe it to the next guy who hasn't had a chance by how you perform. The next guy's also going to be judged, and that's a great. I think we need more of that. Because I go to these certain seminars on how can we be affirmative about this and how can we reach out and do that. I said, okay, where's the component that says the person's going to step up and take advantage of the opportunity? There's got to be that component. I've been getting political. It's pretty. I grew up Republican. It's been pretty difficult lately, but but on the other hand, we got to have some people. We've got to have some personal responsibility of everybody for everybody involved, and we can go too far. We can go too far in either direction, I guess. But anyway, I was just struck in answer to that, and just seeing your comment up there when you said by your personal example. That was kind of drummed in, and we would have had the same experience of being one of a few that anybody would met and thereby judged. And that can be difficult, but it's not the end of the world to be thinking about that kind of a standard. If everybody felt that way, I think it's like, that would also work as well as wearing the bracelet.
Please. John.
Things. seen a lot of responses of the religious community responding to ethical lapses within the business community. I think we see a lot of commentary around that. Does the business community have any sort of collateral responsibilities to call out ethical lapses within the religious community?
Well, I mean, I've you know, I do it with people if I know them well enough. I mean, I'll just say, how do you let some of these people out of church? I mean, with what they're doing. I mean, what's going on? I mean, you know, what I alluded to before, I just do not see. Show me the words that, you know, where do you get this from, some of this stuff, from this hateful stuff that's been going on, you know, from the social values crowd lately. I mean, it's unbelievable to me. And I just say, show, you know, what, and then they, you know, and then they're pointing at all sorts of Old Testament stuff, and then, you know, okay, we take this line, we'll skip this line, okay, we'll take this one. And I mean, it's pretty transparent to me, but yeah, I think there's plenty of opportunity there, and we do, and I mean, in Holland, we asked listen to this, we asked the Chamber of Commerce. They said, because we got these programs on dealing with racism. I said, okay, how about on sexual orientation? I said, if you got any programs to help our workforce, just be tolerant, you know, to be tolerant. I mean, there are all sorts of things about diversity training, but it's mostly about race and sometimes gender, but not so much on sexual orientation. Do you have anything for that? And you know what her answer was? She said, you know, we have a lot of churches in town, so we don't do that. And so then I went to the guy that's the dean of students. I said, okay, we got the president of Chamber of Commerce just says, because we have churches in town, we don't teach tolerance about sexual orientation. Is that okay? That's what she thinks the message is. Is that okay with you? And they're not. They really can't answer because they can't do it very well. I mean, I guess so. If I know the people, I mean, it comes from a genuine respect, and they understand that I can get away with it because they understand it's sincere. But yeah, I think there's plenty of room to do that.
Eric in the back, and then up here.
Just a question. All three of you, we talked about similarities across the religions, and all three of you talked about really that at the core of your religions, it's about how you treat others.
Yeah.
And treating others well. And I was just wondering where in your businesses, if you can think of ways or talk about ways where you proactively embedded that within your culture. Now, obviously, there's leadership by example, but if there are any exact examples that you can give about how you've tried to make right through your organization, not even just at your direct report level, but all the way down the organization, how you imbued a culture of treating others with respect and doing to others the way you'd want them to treat you. If there are any examples of how you've done that in your businesses, beyond what you think other businesses would do.
Good. Yeah, lots of good leaves there.
Well, we've done a lot of talk in our organization about what our purpose is as an organization, and we've determined that our purpose is to make a positive impact on the world for, social impact and environmental impact, and also be able to make some money. So the purpose is fairly clear that we are to make a positive impact. So it starts with that. Maybe the clearest example of really caring for others, or caring. What was your phrase you wanted to use in terms of what we're looking for in terms of
treating others well.
Treating others well.
Kind of the golden rule element through all of your talks.
We have a history that goes back probably 15 years working with people on welfare and trying to help them find a home at Cascade in terms of their ability to be a career there. We call it welfare to career. And we learned that because of really working at trying to retain and have them find respect in the organization, that the whole organization got better as a result of that. And so that was that's something where we truly believe that our goal is for every person to know they are valued, and that we kind of try to figure out what that means in terms of how we go about the job. But to know you're valued, different from feeling or kind of patronized, but you know that you're valued. And that's a pretty high bar, but it's one that we work at, and it's one that we try to be able to have everybody understand throughout the organization.
Just one quick example is treating patients. I mean, I know some. I mean, working throughout my career, I mean, I try to really be accommodating to my patients, especially the one that I know really need to be seen. Like when they call, I know I need to be seen right away. So, I mean, staying extra 15 minutes or half an hour to see those couple of patients, and then they make a big difference for them actually, because they trust their personal physician more than going to like the emergency room or the urgent care or something like that. So sometimes just staying that extra 15 minutes to see that patient who's having shortness of breath or chest pain make a big difference in their life, because they know that you really did something for them. You went late to your home, 15 minutes late just to see them. That's to make a big difference in their life. So that's I try to do it myself every day in my practice.
Well, I might add to that, big corporations right now are using the internet and training. They send you training over the email, and it's a video thing about sexual harassment, about how to respect others, and about the ethics of business and dealings. So, I don't have much use for them, but it's mandatory. You have to go through the training, otherwise to show up in your review. But I think that's one need of training employees to respect others and be mindful of rules, of ethics, and things like that.
My grandfather came here with nothing, maybe 50 cents, and I got everything, and so I'm a real believer in the free enterprise system. But it's been abused lately to some extent. But our value statement says that our company aspires to be a living example of how the free enterprise system can work for all participants. And to have that and to show how that gets applied, but then how it has extra benefit that you might not have expected. Just one example, we have a profit sharing plan that's pretty, and a 401k with that. We have a first-time homeowners program. We have an employee scholarship program, and with the state of Michigan, we stuck with ours, so we'll pay anybody that's worked for us for 3 years, we'll pay 75% of whatever they charge at Grand Valley, and that's going up quite a bit. Not their fault, because of the state. But I can stand in front of our employees. If you got a parent that works here, money will not be the reason why you don't go to get to college. But more recently, we've been working with this prisoner reentry thing. This is for people that have been, that are coming, having been in jail. And you don't even have to be a nice guy. All you got to be is someone who doesn't want to pay more taxes. It doesn't make sense to have these people just go back to jail. It makes sense. It's just a logical thing. And if you could reach out and actually help them, actually, and if it works, it's not going to be just an average employee. I mean, in the right case, they're going to be a better than average employee. So it's not, you're going to get something good out of it. But then we start to think, to make this work, what are all the steps we need to do to try to give that? This is a tough task to make, to make this transition. We started to think about all the things that we could start doing, and then we said, shouldn't we really be doing most of these things with any new employee? I mean, maybe not. So we came to it kind of backwards. We had to do it maybe in an extreme sense, but yeah, we should do all of that kind of stuff to help any employee, or just to help a temporary worker become a full employee. So, I mean, those are a bunch of very specific examples, and when it worked, well, here's another thing, with an example of mutual benefit. When we do this prisoner reentry thing, there's an organization in Holland called 70 times 7, which is derived from a New Testament line about how often are we supposed to forgive these people? Lord, 7, and Jesus answers 70 times 7. But when you hire this one person, you're getting, it's like a TV ad for the cell phone. You get the whole network. You got all these other people that are trying to help that person succeed. You don't even pay for no extra charge. I mean, and a lot of the things that we get credit for being nice guys, I just think I really do think are good business. It can't be quite as short a term as some you got to have a little bit longer term orientation. But it isn't like you have to wait until the afterlife to get it. It's more. It's sooner than that.
I was interested to see the panel's opinion from the different religious beliefs on the issue of social justice, on the issue of where does individual responsibility ends and societal responsibility starts. Big government, small government type thing. Is that my personal reading in the religious, like there's more socialist traits in them than like a totally free enterprise type thing. How does your religious beliefs teach you about those issues?
Well, I'll give you what I mean. I'm not sure if it's the religious information, but it's kind of interesting. I've always said that if you think about the phrase "from each according to his abilities, to each according to his needs," it sounded like it could have been like an extra paragraph in the Sermon on the Mount. But in fact it was Karl Marx. So very, 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 very different. Very different. But and the problem with the extreme, and I think that a really idealistic socialistic thing is probably a religious ideal in many cases. The problem we've seen, and because because in Israel certainly we had early on the kibbutzes, which were very communal, but we've just seen it's just incompatible with human nature as it is. I mean, it doesn't work. So there's a limit. I mean, the limit is far short of communism as we've seen. It just is not sustainable. If you don't see something extra for working a little bit extra, eventually people won't do anything. And in this country, to me, a fundamental political problem is we have not figured out how to help people who actually need help just enough to get them over the hump, and instead enable all sorts of more people who need help. It just waters down, and it's watered down pretty fast. And I see that we have not figured out how to get out of it. But that's political. But I do think that if you go to religious ideals, they would be more socialistic than would work. That's just.
That's an interesting question. I don't know that I've got a good answer to that. That's a thoughtful question, actually. What comes to mind is that that really is almost not our job. Not that it's not, and I don't mean that like it's not my worry, but it seems that in business our role is to work on influencing our community as opposed to worrying about the national politics. And I see so much in what you're suggesting perhaps is more around national politics. And in our work, I think our role, and I think the way change is going to happen in this country and in the world happens locally. It happens in the community. The extent to which we can focus on that as a business is the extent to which we can have influence and the extent to which we can hope to have change. And to that extent, it's communal, but it's not. It isn't like turning your business over or not going broke, trying to save the community. But it's trying to weave those together. I think that's the challenge that we have in business, is to weave together the objectives of the community and the business. And to the extent we can do that is the extent to which we can have a much better place to live.
Just remember two quotes from teaching of Islam. One is the charity, the 2.5% that we're supposed to give to the poor is one of the famous say of Omar, which is one of the leaders of Islam after Prophet Muhammad. He said, if everybody give that 2.5% as supposed to be, there will be no poor on the first earth. So I think if all of us give charity to the poor, I mean, there will be no poor on earth, and that's one thing. The other thing is about how to build a strong community is one of the teaching of Prophet Muhammad. Also, he said, a man will not be a believer in me if he sleeps and he knows that his neighbor is hungry and he knows about it, and he went to bed and had a good night's sleep without making sure that his neighbor will have some food. So if you know that your neighbor is hungry and you went to bed, you will not be a believer in Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him.
Just to pick up on those points that my friend about the starting local, I mean, there's one kind of reassuring phrase, as I said, I've read, is if someone who saves a single life, it's like you've saved the whole world. And religiously, that would go back to, think about Adam and Eve. Okay, you had one, and look what all happened, but you don't even have to go back that far to read stories about some Revolutionary War person, and they've got 1 million descendants today. So each one makes a difference, and the older I get, it seems like the more willing I'm to be local. And it's very, again, going back to this prisoner reentry thing, I mean, they all say one story, one person, one story, one day at a time, but it's depressing to think about getting everything done, but each one that you do is better than not doing any. And each one is important, and that could be, that could be very reassuring in the validity of what of what you do with any of these efforts.
Let us take one last question. Al?
I'm listening, and it sounds like a lot of the discussion is kind of centered around the local. And then, but it's very easy for us to look at Wall Street and see the corruption. And what I've noticed in business is that there's a lot of godly attributes and principles that are brought out in the value statements and the purpose statements in companies. They're not very deliberate about talking about God and the person of God. And is there a way to be more deliberate locally to try to have companies understand the connection between business and religion and success?
My personal choice on that is to try to live my life, my business life, as an example and be representative as opposed to professing.
Right. I think all three of us said almost the same thing, almost exactly. The exact words. The statements actually have, in many cases, can make you a little nervous.
I think that's all they want to say about that. Again, please join me in thanking everybody for and thank all of you for coming as well. Good night.